Kia ora, everybody. My name is Nadine Higgins, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation tonight about financial well-being, or more specifically, how we craft a personalised spending plan to help you create financial well-being. And you might think that that sounds simple, but honestly, it is one of the things that people overlook most commonly, and they just want to skip over to just tell me what to invest in. But this is a crucial first step. And that means it's also a crucial first step to get right, because it is like the thing underpinning the rest of our financial progress. So I'm hopeful that you're going to get some useful tips and tricks to ensure that you craft one that is successful. But before I go any further, these are the kinds of things we're going to get through. What financial well-being is, but also what it isn't, how the spending plan supports the rest of the journey, why we need to know about things like your habits and your mindset and the stories you tell yourself about money. What's that got to do with the price of fish? Well, quite a lot, as it turns out. Then we'll look at some strategies for accelerating your progress. We'll take some questions, and we're actually going to have a little giveaway at the end of tonight for anyone who is attending live. We're going to be giving away a free program of your choice that is best suited to your needs. I'll tell you a little bit more a little bit later. But before I go any further, I do need to just do the quick legal thing, which is this is not intended to be personalized financial advice. It's informational. I'm hoping it's going to be really useful information, but I can't give personal financial advice because I don't know you personally, and we're meeting in a group session. So hopefully what I tell you is going to be really useful. And of course, our team are always available to give you personalized financial advice if that's what you need. As I mentioned, my name is Nadine. I started my career as a financial journalist, and these days I'm a financial advisor, but I also run a financial podcast and write a column. And in my day job, my role is to help you figure out where you're starting from. Sometimes that's harder than it sounds. Help you gain control and a line of sight, give you the tools to be better, but also the confidence to be better. Sometimes we need a little boost along the way, but then to hold you accountable to the things that you said that you valued and that you want to do, because we all do better with a bit of accountability. And ultimately, to get you ahead faster. And that starts with seeing you save more faster. So I just want to start with a quick poll. This is not going anywhere. You can choose as many of these options as are applicable to you, but I'm interested to know, what does financial well-being mean to you? Is it about just having choices rather than just having to go in one particular direction or buy the budget brand or whatever? Is it about being free from financial stress? Is it about being rich? Do you just want to be wealthy? Or is it just maybe about having the things you want to have without having to feel guilty or worried? Is it represented by owning your own home, retiring well, or all of the above? You can tick them all if you so wish. So hopefully that gives you enough time to make some selections. Let's have a look at the results. Choices is huge, and free from financial stress is another one. And I hear that, because how can we feel a sense of well-being when we are constantly worried about where the next dollar is coming from and where it's going to, and if there's a gap between the two? And interestingly, retiring well. I've been doing a lot of work on retirement of late, and look, it creeps up on people and then it freaks you out. So I can completely understand that retiring well is key to financial well-being, because you kind of can't go back and redo your working life too easily once you're actually retired. So thank you for participating in that. It's just good to know where you're at as we get started. So we've talked a little bit about what financial well-being means to you. I guess these stats represent what it's not. Feeling stressed about money, which is about 2/3 of us. Not having anything to work towards is also not a way to financial well-being, because we're aimless. So what do you do in the absence of a goal? Well, you tend to do nothing. Your well-being, for over 1/3 of us, is adversely affected by finances. And look, that is borne out by how many people quote financial stress as a factor in relationship breakdowns. How many people quote that when they say that they can't sleep? This is what they're worrying about, and those things absolutely affect your well-being. These are tough times, and that is borne out in these stats that 1/5 of us, there's been a 20% increase in financial hardship cases last year. High interest rates have a lot to do with that. And that almost 500,000 Kiwis are behind with debt repayments. And if that is not stressful, I don't know what is. So if that's you and you win tonight's competition, we do have a course that is specifically geared toward getting rid of your debt. So maybe that's what you'll choose. All right. I guess the other thing I need to call out, because you'll probably be shouting at me if I don't, is that if it seems harder to get ahead, you're not wrong, in my opinion. Some commentators would argue with me, but I will die on that hill. It is harder to get ahead, but that isn't a sign that we throw up our hands and say, stuff it, I'm not going to try. What it means is if the conditions are harder, we just have to try and be better. And I know that's not the way it should be, but that's the only way that you can adapt to tougher conditions, as we've got to level up. And in order to level up, we need a shift in mindset, which we're going to go through in a moment. We need to understand your situation and also yourself, because we can be our biggest hindrance as well as our biggest asset. So we have to understand ourselves and craft a plan that works for us. You need a goal. You can't be like that statistic before about not having any, we're aimless and floating, and that's not how you get ahead. And then you need a spending plan, which is the blueprint for the financial journey. That's how we identify what's possible. That's how we chart our course there, and that's how we track our progress. So let's start with the mindset piece. And some of this might resonate with you on a number of levels. It could be what you say to yourself about your money. It could be what you say to yourself about your fitness, your appearance, whatever. But all of these things have something in common, and that is that they are defeatist. I can't because, I'll never, I'm just no good. And they're really common, but that doesn't mean that they're helpful. And these narratives can hold you back. And so what we need to do is shift them from this defeatist negative state to a more positive state. And that can be gradual, because you can just flip it to being, okay, I can't get ahead till I've got more money, but actually getting ahead will help me have more money, because I won't be paying so much in debt repayments, or I'll be able to invest in upskilling myself. Rather than saying, I'm no good with money, you could say, I am learning to be better, because that immediately shifts it from being defeatist and nothing I can do will change that outcome to we are on a different trajectory now. And so you're telling yourself that these things are possible, even if you haven't proved it yet. Rather than saying they're not, we're now saying that they are. And if you're not quite ready to kind of look in the mirror and be all gung-ho positive, you can just start it with changing the ending. So rather than I'll never get out of the short-term debt cycle, is I haven't got out of the short-term debt cycle yet. I'm no good with money. I'm not good with money yet, because it just opens up that glimmer of hope. And that is important. And I hear you yelling at me, I can't think myself rich, so why does this matter? It's not as if it's all, the power of attraction and I'm just going to manifest and be wealthy and woohoo, my financial stress is gone. Of course not. But if you take it through the steps, the things that you think inform your actions or your inaction. Inform your actions, and then your actions become your habits, and your habits determine your progress. We are the things that we repeatedly do. So that is how mindset starts to seep into that journey towards progress. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen like that overnight. It takes time. And the research, look, there's a variety of research, but in general, it says new habits take on average about 66 days to stick. And while you're trying to do that, it's going to be hard. It's not going to feel like a drag. And the reason there's an image there of a woman brushing her teeth is just a tiny analogy. If you are brushing your teeth and you try swapping it to the other hand, whew, that feels weird, because we have just got into the habit of brushing with whichever our dominant hand is, and it's become natural and easy and we barely think about it. And then you've got one hand that's injured, so you start using the other and it feels all, uncoordinated and you don't know what you're doing. But you keep doing it and it starts to feel easier and more natural and more habitual. And so if you are starting on a new journey, please stick at it for at least 66 days, because otherwise you haven't given it enough of a chance to bed in. So a psychologist put it to me as being like trying to form a new behavior is like bashing your way through the bush. And to begin with, everything's in your way and you can't get through and it's so hard. But then the next time you walk that path, it's a little easier. And over time, you wear a pathway until there's a track. And it's clear to you next time you come and make that decision that you can take that path. And that is the pathway being formed in your brain. So, look, I'm no psychologist, but this stuff is real if you think about it in the context of your everyday life. But of course, feeling motivated is not going to get you there. We often have motivation at the beginning and it wanes and life gets in the way and then our willpower is drained. So one of the very first things we need is a plan. And in this case, it's your finances. We need a spending plan. And I guess this does a few things. It tells us where our money is going. And it tells us where it needs to go. It tells us how much is left over or not after we've taken care of all of our needs and hopefully some of our wants as well. But it also will, if we dig into it, show us where the most room for improvement is. And that's what we're interested in. We're not going to just keep track of everything we did before. The idea here is to start making a difference. And so that is what the spending plan can do when we do it well. It's also shaped by more than just the numbers coming in and out. It's shaped by, well, what is your starting? And in my experience, a lot of people aren't necessarily in touch with exactly their position. Then it's about where you want to get to. That's the goal. Where are we headed? And that's not the only thing you have to do. There's the saying about the goal determines your direction, but you still have to row, right? So that's about where we want to get to. Then how long have we got to get there? Because obviously a big chunky goal is going to take some time. Do we have the time to achieve it in that time frame? And then there's your natural tendencies. And these are the things that are either to be harnessed or to be mitigated, because some of them are working for us and some of them are working against us. So I'm going to start with your starting point. Let's define where you're at, and then we'll get into some of your tendencies. So very broadly, I would put you into one of three camps. You're either sinking, you're floating, or you're flying. Sinking, as the image suggests, is you're going backwards. We're going down. We are taking on debt just to get by. We are spinning hard to pay those debts, but just never feeling like we're getting anywhere. Floating might feel comfortable, but you are but one or two unfortunate, incidents with the car or your teeth or something else to sinking. We're not getting ahead. We're just kind of floating. Whereas flying is saving at least 20% of what you're earning. And that sounds like a lot, but that truly represents soaring, getting ahead. That gives us the fuel for the fire to achieve our goals. And so have a think about where you sit on that spectrum. Once we know that, well, what is it that we're trying to do? And look, if we are sinking, it's probably to get out of debt and stay out of debt, or maybe build an emergency buffer so we don't quickly end up back in debt. Whereas if you're floating, maybe your goals are, I want to save more. I want to save for a specific purpose. I want to build a savings habit so that I can show the bank that I'm worthy of giving a home loan or to build my deposit. Whatever that goal is, that destination we're heading for, they all have one thing in common, and that is that we need money left over, a cash surplus. And that is where the spending plan comes in. The problem for some of you might be like, I'd love to save more, but actually I'm a shopper. And I identify with that. A shopper does not mean, though, that you are a lost cause. And it doesn't mean that you are, selfish or immaculately well dressed with great nails and hair necessarily. It could be that you are super generous to a fault. It's just that you get emotional satisfaction from spending money, whereas a saver gets emotional satisfaction from saving it. So they have a natural advantage to a degree, but it's not uncommon for a saver and a shopper to be in a relationship, which can be a source of tension. And like I said, a shopper is not a lost cause. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you can do to motivate a shopper. A plotter is somewhere in between, and they can be difficult to motivate because they don't necessarily get huge amounts of emotional satisfaction from either default tendency. And so they will continue to plod along, but that also means that they don't see the urgency in doing anything differently because they're just, taking it as it comes. Then there is your approach to risk. And this is where the saver can come unstuck because they are often a safety warden. And a safety warden I think of as like being the Boy Scout who's always prepared, is scouting the area for risks, and they're probably a health and safety officer or something like that. The problem there, though, is that growing wealth requires some level of risk. And sometimes they can be doing entirely the wrong thing, but they don't want to do it differently because what they're currently doing feels familiar and safe, and that resonates with them because they're a safety warden. Then there's the adventurer who is willing to take a risk, but at the extreme end is probably a little bit of a roll the dice sort of character, and they tend to look at the upside of things. They're like, great, you said up to 9% returns, and so 9% returns, lock it in. Overlooking the fine print that is the best that they've achieved in the past 5 years or whatever. So sometimes they need tempering a little bit. And then there's the dreamer. And the dreamer just kind of thinks that the universe will provide. And I think, as we all know, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And a dreamer, it takes a bit to disillusion them or disabuse them of that idea that it'll be all okay in the end and they don't have to do anything to drive that outcome. In the current environment, you do have to actively pursue success rather than just waiting for it to fall in our lap. Sure, you'll know some irritating person who it has fallen in their lap, but for most of us, we have to work at it. And finally, there is your willpower. And this is about what motivates you. And this is devised by Gretchen Rubin, who's a US author, and she's put us into one of 4 categories, one of which is an upholder, who I think of as the marathon runner who needs no reminding and no accountability to get up on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. and go running in the dark. They just do it because they know that that's what needs to happen. And it's really as simple as that. Type A personality, maybe. Not that there's anything wrong with it. The questioner will do it if it makes sense to them. So they might have a lot of questions to ask. And once they've got the information they need, they're willing to act. But the problem is they can sometimes collect so much information that it paralyzes them, the old analysis paralysis thing. And there comes a point at which more analysis is not going to get us any closer to our goal, only action is. The rebel, I liken to a teenager. So whatever it is you want them to do, they will do the opposite. So they do not respond well to others' expectations or inner expectations or just expectations in general. And sometimes they can be motivated by the fact that you think they can't. And also by living within their values. If it resonates with them on a personal level, then they're more likely to do it. But where most of us fall is the obliger. And an obliger is obliging. They will do things other people ask of them, but they sometimes struggle to do things that they know they should do for themselves unless someone else is expecting it of them. So I think of that in the context of, if you go to the gym and you meet a personal trainer, if they say 2 more reps, you do those 2 more reps. Whereas if it was just you in the gym on your own grinding away, you'd probably stop and have a little rest and a scroll on your phone. And so what the obliger, which again is most of us, really benefits from is someone pushing them along, because we all do a little bit better, try a little bit harder when someone else is watching. And so if we try and bring all of those things together, say that we've identified you are floating and you're also a shopper, but you're an adventurer. So, you get emotional satisfaction from spending money, but you are willing to take risks and you're an obliging personality. We call this the spirited collaborator. So you might, as a way to tailor your spending plan to your personality type, it needs to be a big goal, a goal that you are excited about, because otherwise the shopper will not bother. They'll be like, why would I try? So it has to be juicy. It's also, they're going to benefit from accountability, because that's how the obliger is motivated. And the adventurer might also need the person they're accountable to temper their real risk-taking appetite and help them understand not just the potential benefits, but also the potential pitfalls. So I hope this just starts to illustrate why on earth we want to know who you are and who you're not, in order to start crafting a plan that actually speaks to who you are as a person. Because if you just tell a shopper, save more, stop spending on that, they're unlikely to, because that doesn't motivate them. And as a shopper, I understand that intimately. So we get to the spending plan. And look, if we go to the real nuts and bolts, this is the stuff that you learn in school. In a budget, there's the money that goes on the essentials, the non-essentials, and then there's what's left over. And so the problem with those broad categories is that, look, food is essential, but not all food is essential, like caviar, not essential, but it is a food. Do you see what I mean? Clothes, important we have, unless you live in a nudist colony, it's important that you have some clothes on your back. But if it's the high-end designer dress, that probably slides over into the non-essential category. Nice to have, but you are not going to be arrested for nudity if you don't buy the high-end dress, as long as you've got something from the warehouse or H&M or something. But ultimately, we need to know what is it we need to cover the basics, because we need to have accommodation. We need to cover our bills and keep the power on and food in our bellies. Then what do we need, the non-essentials, to live a happy life? Some of us would say that that is a long list, and some of us, if we've really got serious about it, it's not a long list. But ultimately, everything that's in the non-essential category is negotiable until we have something in the leftover category. And I can see someone already saying non-essential coffee. That depends on your point of view. I'm a much nicer person once I've had a cup of coffee, so I would put that in the essentials category. But we're going to get to some of that prioritizing very shortly. So how do we increase what's left over? Well, our estimation is that about 15% of our income just kind of fritters off into the ether without actually making us any happier. And so when I say takeaways, coffees and booze, that's not because a drink or a takeaway coffee can't be an intentional purpose that does make you happier, but it's the frequency of those things we lose track of. And so we think we spend this much, we actually spend this much. And over time, those small frequent purchases, the overspend is phenomenal if you actually start tracking it. Trips to the supermarket beyond the kind of essential weekly shop, supermarkets are designed to lean into the power of suggestion and impulse buys, and they work on the tricep test. So you pick up the basket and they basically know that you won't go to the checkout until your arm is kind of like, oh, I can't lift the basket anymore. So basically, the fewer times you go to the supermarket in a week, the better for your budget. We also, look, everything's on subscription these days, and it's so easy to lose track as to what you subscribe to. But what I do in my household is, when I've watched the show I wanted to watch on Netflix and it kind of isn't really anything left there and I'm just scrolling aimlessly, cancel it for a bit, because then that's not another, $19 or something going out the door every month for something I'm not using or don't have the time to use because I've got 3 other subscription services at the same time. Or, more's the pity, the gym membership you don't use. Maybe it's time to put it on pause. There are huge inefficiencies in things like the way you structure your mortgage if you have a mortgage, and also insurances. And look, fixing those inefficiencies is definitely not going to make you any less happy. Paying less to the bank or less to the insurance company isn't going to make you sad. Guarantee it. It might actually have the opposite effect. Then there's what we call lazy tax, and that is simply the money we could save if we shopped around. So that might be that you could get a better deal on your power. It could be that you could get a better deal on your broadband. You just haven't looked. Then there's bank fees, because they creep up on you. And there's interest payments, because if you've got debt, honestly, it is dead money unless it's for a productive asset. And so that's one of the things we need to knock on the head in order to increase what is left over. So we're going to review our insurances. We're going to review your utilities, and there are lots of easy ways to do that, one of which is the Power Switch website. Super easy. You just put in a few details and it will tell you whether you'd be better off with another provider. And if you are, go. It's a little bit of life admin, but if there's a saving to be made, I think I suggested it to someone a while back and they worked out they could save $600 a year. And look, that's only a start, but that's $600 that you were giving away that you didn't need to. Opt for, if they're available, 0 fee bank accounts. That might be about turning off the statements that they send you in the mail that you don't read anyway and you could read online. Why are you paying for them? It's important as well to set up alerts, if you can, on your bank account that will alert you when your account dips below a certain level. Because sometimes we get stung with unarranged overdrafts because the money's sitting in the wrong account and the AP comes out, or the direct debit goes out and the money's not there. You do have it, you just don't have it in that account. You can avoid that with just some simple systems that help you to gain back control. You can also tell the bank, I don't want an unarranged overdraft. It doesn't mean they won't charge you a fee for a dishonored payment, but unarranged overdrafts are expensive. So you can tell them you don't want them. And we're going to go through and do an audit of our memberships and our subscriptions. We're going to do the good old thing your Nana probably told you, which is create a meal plan so that we go to the supermarket once a week or shop online. I think do a click and collect, that's free. But it also means that you can look in the pantry and see what's actually there to create the meals you're looking for. And then one thing I find really powerful is ring fencing basically the spending you have budgeted for that's on all the things you put in your gob, food, coffee, takeaways, whatever, into one account. And that is the only account that we are going to buy those things from. And at the end of the week, once it's gone, you eat what's in the fridge. That might be eggs for tea. And it can lead to some weird meals, but it will tell us very quickly if we are on track to overspend or have overspent. And then when it's topped up again next week, we start fresh and we do things differently. The number one thing, though, I think that will help you with all of these things is tracking. So this is one free tool that you can download just by scanning the QR code on your screen. You could go down the app route, and we do have options there, but this is a good place to start. It's our cash controller. And it's a very simple worksheet that you will populate with all of your specific numbers. And at the bottom, it spits out what is left over. And then you can start tinkering with those numbers when you've cancelled the Netflix or the gym subscription or whatever, to start improving that surplus at the bottom. So that is your challenge. And we'll also, if you haven't had the chance to scan that QR code, I think we'll pop that in the follow-up email tomorrow. Then we look at the other side of the equation. So we've looked at minimizing the money that's going out the door needlessly. Then we need to get as much money coming in as we can. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but also I think a lot of people discount things that are legitimate. And I just want to point you to, if you need some inspiration, Enable Me did a podcast series called Where's My Money, in collaboration with MediaWorks. And one of the episodes in, I think, season 2 is a woman called Tracy. She's the debt-free diva. And she talks about how she ditched $100,000 of debt. And hopefully Amelia can pop that link for you in the chat, so that's my producer, so that you can find it. But otherwise, go searching for Where's My Money in the podcast app. That shows you all of the things that she did to turn that around. And it was things like doing surveys. It's about setting up a side hustle. It's about selling things on Marketplace or Trade Me, getting in the border or the exchange student, asking for a pay rise, mowing the lawns, babysitting. Like, the list is endless. And in the kind of gig economy, there's lots of opportunities to do that. Not all of them will be palatable. Not all of them will be right for you, but some of them will be. And if you are willing to do that, it can make a huge difference. So I think budgets get a bad rap. And I just want to point out that optimizing your spending isn't about making a life that you hate, because you're never going to stick to that. It is actually the first step in crafting a life that you enjoy, because having a life that you enjoy means one that doesn't involve lots of stress, and it's about promoting your well-being. So how do we do both? Well, one thing I recommend is focusing on the things that bring you joy. And a spending plan can help you define that, because if you look at a particular category and you're like, oh my gosh, I said that the thing I value the most is holidays with my children, but look at I'm spending the equivalent of an annual holiday on takeaways each year. Maybe my priorities are not being reflected by my spending plan. What if we tweaked this and I can have that holiday? Why have I put up a picture of this woman? Well, this is Marie Kondo, who wrote a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And it's not unlike cleaning up your finances. But the thing that resonated with me that she talks about is, does it bring you joy? And so that's about getting things out of the cupboard and being like, does it give me joy? But it's relevant to your finances, because we want to prioritize the things that make your life worth it, that make the hustle worth it. And sometimes that means looking at the things that do not make you happier and finding ways to do it cheaper and smarter and more efficiently, so that you have the money to spend on the things that bring you joy. So have a think about that when you next look at your cash controller or your budgeting app or your spreadsheet or whatever. What brings you joy? And what are you spending money on that leaves you less money to spend on the things that bring you joy? So if we start to kind of bring these threads together, we talk about having a money fit mindset, because obviously if you're fitter, you can go faster. And I think that that's really relevant. We're all hungry to get it done like tomorrow, rather than waiting forever and a day to achieve our goals. So I think there are 4 pillars that we have to have in place. We have to have some degree of knowledge, but that knowledge is not just about financial literacy. I'll tell you what I think it is in just a moment. We have to have a strategy. That's the plan. We have to have the systems, and that's things like the alerts on your bank account, or tracking your spending so that you can see where it's actually going. And then there's accountability. And I truly believe that that bit is key. Someone watching and someone knowing what it is you're aiming for makes you more likely to do the thing you said you would and you know you should in order to achieve that. So when I talk about knowledge, I'm not just talking about financial literacy. Yes, we have to know a bit, but there is research to suggest that knowing doesn't really translate to doing in the absence of the other factors. So knowledge is not just about knowing the right thing to do. Like, yeah, we all know we should spend less than we earn. We actually need the way to bring that about rather than just knowing that that's what we should do. So it is coming back to knowing yourself, your psychology, the things you're telling yourself that might be sabotaging your chances, and your tendencies. How do you spend? How do you think? How are you motivated? The things that trigger you, you might be an emotional spender. And if you know that, then you can start to put in place the things that change that. You need to understand the situation you're in accurately rather than the rose-tinted version of that. You also need to know how you got there, because if you don't clock that, you are not doomed, but you are more likely to repeat it because you didn't realize that those are the things that you got wrong that got you to the position you don't want to be in. Then you need to know the options. If we know what we're aiming for, what are the options for how to get there? Which one is the right one based on what you've learned about yourself? And also, I think I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it is important to have a why. And I said this about the shoppers earlier. If you don't have a big old juicy reason to do things differently, then the appeal of changing your behavior in those first 66 days when you're still figuring out how to make the path more automatic is unappealing, and you won't stick to it. Whereas you have to keep coming back to, here's why it matters for me to do things differently. Here's why it matters. Constantly remind yourself of that. And then, of course, I've said it before and I'll say it again, there is power in having someone in your court. Ideally, someone that you are willing to listen to, that you trust their advice, and it isn't just your kind of uncle's second cousin's brother at the barbecue at the weekend. I'm feeling like, wow, here's what you need to do. Invest in crypto. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but we all know someone like that. Okay, so some takeaways before I take some of your questions and we do the giveaway. I keep coming back to this, but your thoughts, the way you think is really important. Your mindset has power, and it will be the thing that prompts you to do something or discourages you from doing anything. And doing nothing begets nothing, right? A good spending plan, stop thinking of it as restriction. If it allows you to prioritize the things that really matter for you, then you can spend without guilt. And isn't that what we said represented one of the aspects of financial well-being, being able to do the things you like, buy the things you like without feeling guilty? Find the ways to boost the surplus in your spending plan, the fritter, all of those unused subscriptions, the bank fees, the mortgage structure. Then find ways to get more cash coming in. And there's many of them, so no excuses for not finding at least one that works for you, and derive that surplus, because that is the engine room behind achieving all of your financial goals. And then just remember that if the plan is not quite working, maybe we need to revisit, is it the right one that factors in your tendencies, how you think, how you feel, and lean into accountability and support, because changing habits is not easy, because there's comfort in just doing the same old thing. And so, get someone to take you by the hand. It will definitely make it easier. And I think most people say, well, I will when I'm just a bit more financially confident. But do you know what gives you confidence? Getting results. And so start small, get some runs on the board, and it will feed your confidence. Whereas if you just sit there on your hands waiting for the right moment, it'll never appear, and doing nothing will sap your confidence further. So it's really important, whatever you do, to start. And I mentioned a little bit about Money Fit and the courses we offer, and that we're giving away one tonight. But Money Fit is a bit of a wraparound service. You know, there is a tracking app so that you can have the right systems and the knowledge in place, especially if you're a questioner, you need that feedback. It brings with it a community to help with accountability, and it brings the many years that Enable Me has distilled down into the courses to up your knowledge about yourself, about improving your mindset, about your spending plan, about debt reduction options, about preparing for retirement. And we are building more all the time. So if you'd like to check out the resources, please do. As I said, there's the free cash controller that you can download. There are ebooks available, but the courses, there is power in those because they'll take you through things step by step and you can start tracking. So at this point, I'm going to take a wee breath, and you are welcome to ask any questions you have, and we'll get through as many of them as we can, and then we will give away a course. So Amelia, over to you.
Thanks, Nadine. Our first question that was submitted is, do you have any advice on how to manage your finances when it comes to emotional spending?
Mm. Yes, it depends on the emotion that's triggering it. And I know this sounds like some sort of psychoanalysis, but if, for example, you are prone to spend when you are sad, it might be about digging into I guess that's a dopamine thing, right? You feel sad, so you want a quick hit. I'd review how you feel afterwards, because I would suspect that if we just focus on the dopamine hit, we aren't taking into account the regret that comes afterwards. And it is also coming back to the big fat juicy why, that I feel sad, spending on something will make me feel temporarily happy, but what will ultimately make me feel happy is achieving X. And then I think it's about removing some of the triggers, because if you are sad, and then I know that I'm boiling this down to very simple triggers, but you're feeling sad and then you jump online, your credit card is pre-stored in the website, and all of a sudden, you know, you're at the checkout. Maybe we take the credit card out of being stored in the browser. Maybe we take it out of your wallet so that next time you feel that way, there's something to give you pause before you act on the same thing you always did. And then let's find another way to deal with those feelings. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Our second question is, do you have any tips on managing a spending plan when you are on a variable income?
Mm, excuse me. It is tougher because the benefit that someone who just has a regular wage coming in every week or a regular salary is that it's predictable. And so you need to be able to smooth out your expenses wherever you can. And so that might be about, we're only going to do this thing at this point, rather than let's just do it now and it'll sort itself out. You need to have a buffer, because if you don't have that safety net, emergency fund of savings, then if there's a longer than expected period between drinks or paychecks, that's when we end up in short-term debt, and then that worsens the situation in future. It solves it temporarily, but it comes at a very high cost. So we need to smooth out our expenses. We need to know exactly what your life costs at a minimum. Like if you had to strip it back to the bare bones, what does that cost? Because then we know what our survival number is. And I think we have to be really careful about the discretionary piece. I think we have to make sure that we have our buffer in place before we go down the I deserve it, I work hard route. You have to make sure that the boom times when the income's flowing thick and fast, it doesn't just all get spent, and some of it is used to provision for the inevitable leaner times.
Thank you. Our third question is, how can I overcome paralysis by analysis in investing?
Um, get some advice. um, and start small, because sometimes I think we have to change the world in one decision, whereas maybe the first step just needs to be like the foot of the elephant instead of trying to fit the whole thing in your mouth. There doesn't have to be just one massive decision. We could break it down into smaller decisions that feel less paralyzing. Um, Information is useful, it absolutely is, but if you are one of those, that's when it becomes less than useful.
All right. Our last question. Someone asked what your podcast is called.
This is a plant. Thank you for asking that question. It's called the Prosperity Project, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, or it is also on the New Zealand Herald website. If you go there, look up my name, all my columns and all my podcasts are there. We only started recently, so we're releasing new episodes all the time. And yeah, have a listen. Please be kind in the reviews.
I think it's time for the giveaway now.
Okay. All right. So how are we doing this, Amelia?
So we've done a draw of everybody who's attending
Yes.
right now, and the winner is Karina Andrews.
Okay, Karina, we will be in touch with you as to how you can redeem that and the options that are available to you. But I would just encourage you, you turned up tonight and all power to you. It shows that you're investing in your future. Now's the time to take the next step and take your winning and make it count. So thank you. Congratulations, Karina. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. Of course, if you didn't win a course, you can also check them out, head to the website, see what's there and how it will help you. And we will be sending out a recording of this tomorrow for anyone who had a less than ideal connection or experience. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening.